I want to make this video this evening to discuss the new gun laws passed in New York recently. I've been trying to look them over, figure them out, see where I stand on some things. They're a little bit confusing. There's some things about them I don't understand. Now, I'm not really making this video to actually go over the details of the law. I wanted to go over, what I feel about the law, what I think should be the next steps, and what I think this law means for other states. But we'll go over them a little bit here just to get started. Now, most of you probably know the law already better than I do because you've probably been studying it pretty closely. Now, there are a few things about the law that do stand out. Of course, there's the new 7-round limit for magazines, which is arbitrary and ridiculous. I don't understand it at all. There is the reduction of number of features that a gun has to be before it is an assault rifle. Now it just has to have be a semi-automatic, have a detachable magazine, and only have one characteristic of what they consider a military rifle, like bayonet lug, collapsible stock, things like that. Now, a lot of people panicked and thought that it meant immediately, if it only has to have one feature, that a detachable magazine itself would make it an assault rifle. No, it's not just a detachable magazine. It's got to be semi-automatic, have a detachable magazine, and have one other feature of a semi-automatic military-style weapon. It used to be 2 features, now it's just 1. But a detachable magazine alone does not do it. And they also want to have background checks on ammunition, which I think is a bit silly. But, I could almost see an argument for that, but I just don't think it's going to do anything. Now, the worst parts about the law, I think, are this whole notion that you have to re-up every 5 years, basically, to keep things you already have. Assault weapons or ARs that you already have, if you have them legally now, you can only sell them to immediate family or sell them out of the state if you get rid of them, and you can only keep them if you re-up every year, basically. You go to have another background check every 5 years. It's 5 years. You have to be rechecked every 5 years, which I don't agree with that at all. If someone commits a crime and they're a felon, well, deal with them once they're convicted, found guilty of a crime. You don't put the burden on citizens to every 5 years prove, hey, look, I'm still not a criminal. That in itself is pretty bad, and I don't think that's going to withstand court scrutiny. The other thing is there's no grandfathering on magazines. You have 1 year to either sell them out of state or have them modified where they only accept 7 rounds, which I think is another part of the law, which may actually work in our benefit. But going over the laws there, they're just kind of weird, kind of out there, kind of really far-reaching. You really have to think, how did someone come up with these? Because these people that make these laws, they have to be privy to the same facts and statistics that the FBI provides that we all see, and shows that none of this stuff ever does anything, so you have to wonder why they're doing it. Now, before I go on to the problems I have with some of the things, I will state that this is different than the federal government passing anti-gun laws, because I don't think the federal government has any right to pass any anti-gun laws because it's not in their jurisdiction, it's not in their powers. But because the Supreme Court has declared that you can pass reasonable gun restrictions, it does fall under the state's right to pass gun restrictions. They do have that right. And then they can pass the laws and then see if they stand up to constitutional challenge. Now, one thing I do want to say about these laws, though, I do not agree with these laws being passed in backroom, shady deals. I do not believe them being passed by politicians serving their own best interests. I believe anything that changes a major law like this should have to be passed by referendum or ballot initiative. Politicians are sent to the Capitol to do certain things, but they're not sent there to do other things. We're not sending you there to change our way of life. We're sending you there to keep the roads paved, keep the trains running on time, keep the city workers paid, keep the state workers paid, keep the National Guard running. There's all kinds of things you're sent there to do. Restricting freedoms and taking rights away from citizens without them having a vote in it is not one of them. So I don't agree with things like this being passed the way this was passed. I think, like I said, it should be passed through referendum or ballot initiative before I even give it any credibility whatsoever. Now let's talk about some of the things that I see that are problems with the law itself. The 2 biggest things I see being that where you have to be rechecked every 5 years. I have a friend who's a federal court judge, and he said, that to him seems like it's shifting the burden of proof of innocence to civilians instead of the burden of proof of guilt to the accuser. He says, so he doesn't think that's going to withstand court challenges when it comes up. And I tend to agree. For what little understanding I have of the law, that makes sense to me. Another thing that they said that's really going to have a problem is the magazine restrictions, not being grandfathered in, punishing somebody for having something that they bought when it was perfectly legal. He said that usually does not hold up well in court. That alone could probably get the whole law thrown out. But I'm not really even certain they don't want the law thrown out, because I can't imagine that they went this far with these things that aren't going to do anything. They're arbitrary, they're ridiculous, and we all know how safe New York City is now. The only safety New York City does have is because they have forced all the poor people out into the suburbs, increased the crime in the suburbs, and just let the rich people stay in the city. That's the only reason New York City is as safe as it is, and which isn't very safe. And that whole thing is why they're doing this. These politicians are serving this rich elite that live inside New York City, and they're making all the laws because politicians are serving their whims. Because these rich people, these ultra-rich that live in New York City, they're the ones that donate more to every political campaign than every other middle-income person in the state does. Every one of them donates more than 1,000 other ordinary citizens, if not much, much more than that. So, of course, the politicians are doing what they want. And, rich people think that poor people should rely on the police just like they rely on their own personal security forces and their bodyguards. They don't realize not the same thing. So, of course, it ends up in the end being bad for us ordinary citizens. But like I say, I don't even know if they think it will withstand constitutional challenges. I think they know it will be limiting. They are definitely limiting what people can own, how many of things they can own. They have to get rid of things they already own. There's so many limits in there already that I just don't see it withstanding a Second Amendment challenge, and I really don't think the state thinks it will either. I don't think Cuomo thinks it will. I think one of the things they want to do is I think they want to put people in this position where they think it's going to stand, it might stand, and in that time period they sell their ARs out of state, they sell their high-capacity magazines out of state, and then even when the rule gets struck down 9 or 10 months from now, all these people have sold their stuff out of state thinking they only had a year to do it and they had to get it done. So now they don't have these things, and even if the law gets struck down, they'll revert back to the previous laws. And these items that were already grandfathered in, these assault weapons that were already grandfathered in that people could legally own, well, they've sold them now, and now they can't get them back because they can't re-grandfather them in. And that's one of the things I think they're doing. I think this was just a way to get some of the guns out of the state, even if they know, well, even if it comes back in 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, we lose our court challenges, all the guns are already going to be sold off. I just think that's one of the backdoor things they're trying to do here, and I think it's kind of disgusting, but I really do think that is one of the things they're trying to do. The only other thing I can think they're doing is that it's the attempt of mafioso Cuomo, or Prince Cuomo as some people call him. It's his bid to be king. He thinks this is his chance to put his name in the forefront, to make him the lead candidate for the next presidential election for the Democratic Party. And I think that's pretty clear that that's what his goals are. And I'm sorry, this guy's sleazy. I mean, I'm a liberal, and I'm not a Democrat, but I am a liberal. And to me, he's sleazy. People say, well, liberals like him. No, liberals don't like him. He's sleazy. Leftists like him and his own. And I know he says, the whole mafioso thing and the mafia thing is an insult to him because he's Italian and all this stuff. I'm like, if you don't want to be compared to a mafia don, then don't run your state like one. Don't act like one. Don't rule from your golden throne and pretend like you know better than everybody else and that no one should be able to challenge you. If you're going to act the part, don't be offended when you're compared to the part. So in the end, like I say, I think this adds up to a way to get rid of some guns quickly, a way for a would-be king to become king, and I think it doesn't really even plan on passing any constitutional challenges. I think it was just, like I say, a short-term measure. I think it was for publicity. So if it does stand, it'll be the worst gun country in the world. It'll be the worst gun laws in the country. But I don't want people thinking this whole the sky is falling because of what happened in New York. It really isn't a sky is falling issue for the gun community, because all New York has done now has gone from being the second worst place in the country to try to own a gun to the first worst place in the country to own a gun. There's still that little cluster of bad states, California, Illinois, and New York. Those are still the same. They're still anti-gun. They're still horrible, and they're horrible because they're run by their elite. Their elite that have their own private bodyguards, their own private forces, and who think the rest of us should just rely on the police and should be disarmed. So in the end, it really, even if it stands, is not the biggest loss for the gun community, because New York wasn't exactly a friend of the gun community anyway. But I don't think it will stand, and I think it was just their way of achieving these short-term goals, getting Cuomo attention, getting some guns out of the state, and doing some things to shore up their political contributions. In the end, I just don't think any of it's going to amount to a hill of beans.